You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
Welcome back. Lavora Barnes is, she's the best. She leads the Michigan Democrats. She, first took the position when the GOP controlled the governor's office and the state legislature. Today, Democrats have a trifecta in the state, and they're moving to gain seats in counties and municipalities from the edge of Lake Superior to the border of Ohio. And some of you remember her. She's been on the show a bunch of times. She's just the best. Lavora, welcome back.
It's great to be back, Edwin. It's good to hear your voice.
Well, I haven't talked to you since you were reelected as party chair. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Two more years. We have 2-year terms here, so 2 more years.
Yep. And you look, before we get into the whole conversation, you have been going nonstop for longer than 2 years. How are you doing?
I'm tired, but, energized. When you have built something like we've built here in Michigan, it's going to take a lot of energy to keep it going. And we have so much work to do that we have to keep going. So, every day I find something new that energizes me. Many days it is like Gloria's grandson, but whatever it is, it keeps me going because the work is too important. And as we say, there's no time to rest. We just keep going.
So the work really is important, and you and I have a little bit more time than usual this morning or this afternoon, and we're not up against an imminent election. So I'm hoping that we can explore for people a little bit the importance of the time we're living in, why the choice that people make today is so important, why they're in a time that matters, and the path that Democrats are trying to take for our future, which is different than the one the Republicans are on in terms of values, approach to governing, and the role of politics. I'm hoping we can get into that a little bit. Is that okay?
I would love to. It's funny. I was just having a conversation with the Black woman who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee here in Michigan about just this and how the budget that she is currently working on reflects our democratic values, and there's a very different budget. And what we'll see out of this budget here in Michigan is so different from the budgets the Republicans passed because we live our values through our budget. A lot of times we talk about you can look at a budget and tell what someone cares about. And this budget the Michigan Dems are going to put together is going to show that we care about the people of Michigan. And you're right. This time is so important, and you don't know how much time you have. And so the Democrats in the legislature recognize that they have so much work to do that they are wasting no time getting it done. I know you all are seeing it. They're just plowing through issue after issue, passing legislation because time is fleeting and we don't know how long this majority will hold. I intend for it to hold for decades, but who knows, right?
Right. I remember my time in government thinking, I was part of an administration. I knew I could be there for 4 years, but that's a limit. And every day there was just nothing to do but work full on because it's just a privilege to be able to make a difference when you can do it.
That's exactly right. And they're taking it seriously. And, the governor took it seriously from the moment she walked through those doors, even though she had a Republican legislature. But now with this trifecta that we have, that we are so proud of, so much is going to get done for the people of Michigan, and I'm just so proud of it.
In a period in our history where the politics in the GOP, a lot of it is attacking women, not just by stripping away the constitutional right to reproductive choice, but by fighting everything from equal pay to parental leave to having their potential next nominee and last president, in the midst of a rape trial, as if that's not completely disqualifying. The leadership of women in Michigan stands not just as the greatest, but also the greatest rebuke of MAGA politics.
That's absolutely true. And as you've watched what the women who are leading here in Michigan have had to go through, the attacks and the kinds of attacks, the violent threats against their lives and the just mean and unkind attacks on their person and on their families, that they just continue to stand tall and do the work while all of that attack happens. And I have to say, we have some terrific men also here in Michigan, but the women are singularly head and shoulders above anything that we've seen before in Michigan in terms of their leadership, their ability to understand what the people of Michigan need and want, and then deliver on the promises that they make. It's been such a joy to watch. We always knew that if we put women in charge, it would make a huge difference in the lives of Michiganders. Same thing in the country. You put women in charge, it's just going to make a difference. But we're seeing the evidence of it here in Michigan, and it's spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, they are smart and really hardworking and strategic.
And unafraid in a way that I'm not sure everyone quite understands how hard it is to stand up and be these strong, powerful women in the face of the attacks and the anger and the scary, scary threats that they are getting, but unafraid to stand up for what they believe in and fight for the people of Michigan.
Yeah, the courage is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And they've just been so, smart about how they've done it. I mean, they're winning every battle. It's pretty remarkable.
It is, and really working so well together. The way that they've taken their offices and their different roles and attacked each issue, each problem that needed to be attacked from the perspective of their office, but always where appropriate, in concert, so it really just working really well together as a team. It's been so good.
Well, so on top of having values that put, I want to say more than put people first, because that's not really clear we have the time to tell people what we mean by that. Right. And it isn't putting business last. It's understanding that jobs are really important and that we can attract businesses, and want them to grow, but we want them to grow in a way that everybody gets opportunity and a chance to benefit from the value they create.
Right. It's supporting businesses in their efforts to also make the lives of Michiganders better. It's making it so that businesses can create and grow jobs and pay healthy living union wages. It's making it so that more businesses can come into Michigan, making it a welcoming place for businesses to come and set up shop, because people will want to come here and live here because their rights will be protected. It's an all-inclusive, in a way, we like to now compare ourselves to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is Florida. Like you are welcome here, whoever you are, whatever you believe, whoever you love. And businesses are welcome here because they will be happy to come to an environment where you will find hardworking, smart Michiganders ready to take those jobs and do the work as long as you pay them a fair wage and you treat them fairly in the workplace.
Yeah. And don't dump your stuff in Lake Huron.
And don't dump your stuff in our water. Right. That's exactly
right. I mean, we have this dichotomy, right, between you want to do right by people and you want to do right by business. And the Republicans have made a lot of that. But the truth is, businesses like being in Michigan.
Yes. And the Republicans did a terrific job for many, many years of making it seem as though there had to be some separation between support for business and support for workers. And what we find is that here in Michigan, businesses come to Michigan and support their workers and treat their workers well, because Michigan is a great place to grow a business. It's not one or the other. It's both.
Right. And when we make it one or the other, we all lose, as we have seen. Yep. All right. So that gets at values. Now, before you were talking about how these fabulous leaders in your state work together. There's an approach to governing that's different with Democrats than with Republicans too.
Very different, very different. And, the governor has said, even while the Republicans were in the legislature, she was willing to sit down, talk to, and work with anyone who was willing to come to the table. She was not just going to be talking to the Democrats because she knew she couldn't get things done. She continues to believe that. If Republicans want to come to the table to have conversations about the legislation that's moving forward, they are welcome to do that. Their choice, however, seems to be to not come to the table because they want to continue to stand on the side of divisiveness and to make sure that they are as far to the right as they can get, while the Democrats are busy getting the work done. And Democrats, we're a diverse group. We are not a monolith. So, we sit at a table and have many different views often, but come to a consensus. And this legislature and this governor have figured out a way to work together so beautifully to move this legislation through really quickly. I don't know that I've been doing this for a very long time, and I don't know that I have seen a legislature move so much large, important legislation so quickly as this Michigan legislature has done. And it's been hard work for them. I know, long hours and a lot of working hard across the two bodies of the legislature, the House and Senate, and with the governor. A lot of work to get it all done, but they've moved massive amounts of legislation, and they have more to come.
Do you want to talk about some of those bills?
I would love to. I don't even know where to start. I think this morning, because I've been listening to my son ask me questions about child labor because he saw a story about it. I'll start by saying we repealed right to work here in Michigan, which the Republicans put in place in the cover of darkness about a dozen years ago. That was something that we as Democrats had wanted to do. That right to collectively bargain is so important, and to making sure that workers' rights are taken care of. So that's done. They've done common sense gun safety laws already, and I believe there are more of those laws to come. They've invested in the budget that's coming is going to invest in communities and education and teachers and schools in a way that we haven't been able to before. They have taken that old 1931 abortion law off the books. Finally, that's done. The list is so long; it's hard for me to actually remember to say all of it.
Well, just the ones you've covered. Workers, weapons, schools, guns. And there was a time in America where there was a grand consensus. Actually, there is again, but not between the two parties. But there was a grand consensus in the parties about, the things America wanted to do. And there was some disagreement about how to get them done. And conservatives and liberals differed on how to achieve similar ends. But you've just picked four topics: workers, weapons, schools, women, where there's not a consensus, where we just absolutely differ on the goals we want to achieve. And it goes right again to our sense of values. Absolutely. And, a lot of people, I think, 10, 15 years ago would have been frightened as Democrats have moved this agenda. But because we all ran races here in Michigan, telling the people of Michigan, this is what we intended to do. This is what we will do when we have the power to do it. And they said, yes, that's what we want from you. And they elected our people to do this. And then our legislature went in and got it done. Talk about, the cliche of promises made, promises kept. But this is what it is. We told them what we were going to do, and then we did it. There's no surprises here. Any of the Republicans who pretend like any of this was a surprise have not been paying attention, because we were in everybody's mailbox, on everybody's door, talking about these issues throughout the election. The people of Michigan asked us to do this. And Michigan, because you're doing these things, Michigan is thriving again. And on the other side, where they have also kept their promises to give everybody a gun at birth, to privatize schools, to strip workers of rights, and to strip women of rights, they're also keeping their promises, like in Iowa. And putting children to work in factories, as you mentioned, child labor. We're going to see that the promises made by Democrats lift people up, and the promises made by Republicans are sort of devastating to people in those states.
Devastating. And they continue to move the devastating legislation all around the country. We're watching it happen every day on the news, while we're also watching every day in the news another innocent member of our society being taken down by guns, because we can't get the Republicans to understand the people of this country want common sense gun legislation. It's a simple thing that they refuse to do because they are in the pocket of someone who doesn't want it done. And that's where most of the evil, angry legislation comes from on the Republican side, is that they are beholden to someone who wants them to behave that way. And the Democrats are beholden only to the voters who have brought us into the legislature, who brought us into Congress, who brought us into the presidency and the governorship, and want us to do the work of the people.
It is a great point to take a break on, because I need to take a break. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back, and don't leave, because we're talking to Lavora Barnes. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
And we're back, and I'm talking to the wonderful Lavora Barnes, who leads Michigan's Democrats. And before the break, we talked about the values that Democrats are bringing, and the set of issues that she and the folks in Michigan have now passed laws on that are so very important: workers, women, schools, guns. I want to go back, Lavora, to just talk about the way we approach governing for a second, because as I watch, again, the women in your state, but the way the government works, I see a commitment to transparency, to accountability, a very pragmatic kind of governing as opposed to ideological, and a focus on outcomes that people can see and understand. And that's not the approach to governing I see when the other side's in charge.
No, that's exactly true. And that a lot of that, frankly, comes from our terrific governor and works its way through the government, through her leadership. She believes so much in the ability of government to make a difference in people's lives, and that we do that work with transparency and honesty and accountability to the people who put her in office. And it has trickled down through her entire administration, and of course over into the now Democratic-led legislature with a speaker in Joe Tate who believes in transparency and accountability and taking care of the people, and of course a Senate Majority Leader in Wendy Brinks who are also really working really well together. One from Detroit, one from Grand Rapids, really just representing Michigan and the people so well in their efforts to move us forward here.
So you said like one from Michigan, one from Detroit, and one from Grand Rapids. I don't know if everybody listening understands what a miracle it is that someone from Detroit and someone from Grand Rapids, those two parts of the state, will work well together.
It is true. And for so many years, when I worked in the legislature for many years, it was hard to even move legislation that was specifically written to support the city of Detroit, because the folks on the west side of the state were uncomfortable or afraid to vote for it because of how they thought their folks would react to support for the majority black city on the east side of the state, Detroit. And now we've come to a place where we have Democrats from the west side of the state, which is, relatively new in what we're doing because of the way we've grown our work in their party. And then we have Democrats who believe in making sure that all the peoples of the state, no matter where they're from, get the support that the legislature should provide them. And Wendy Brinks and Joe Tate represent those two sides of the state and really work incredibly well together. And all of our legislators, as they get to know each other from opposite sides of the state, from the north, UP, all the way down to the south, are all getting together to make sure that they are moving legislation that supports everyone, whether it's a specific to a region piece of legislation or something that affects everybody statewide, like the LGBTQ legislation that they passed that enshrines those rights into the Civil Rights Act. That's something everybody got behind from all over the state. And then there'll be other things, particularly as we go through appropriations, they'll be more regional, and they'll support each other in getting that done as well.
This goes to something that's been an enormous problem for Democrats across the country that you've seemed to have solved in Michigan. And I remember talking to Steve Bullock, who was running in Montana. And he said, look, I am telling people I'm a different kind of Democrat, you know, and I remember thinking, and then I think I said it to him, when we run against our fellow Democrats, when we run by saying I'm not one of them, I'm different, every time we do that, we have to start over, and it's more expensive for everybody to run, right? Because all we're doing is the negative campaigning for the other guys while we do it.
That's exactly right.
Right. And just like, so what do we stand for if we only stand as different than the others? That's one of the challenges of a big tent party, right? We have vast differences amongst ourselves. But those differences are not differences in fundamental values. And we all agree that the set of issues that America cares about are the ones we're going to pick up and work on. And that the way we govern is going to be the way we've talked about, transparent and pragmatic and accountable, so we can get through those things. You've solved that, because forever, people who are very close like to fight with each other more than they like to fight with anybody else.
Well, let's not pretend that there aren't disagreements, and I won't call them fights. Let's not pretend that there aren't disagreements. But you're right. There's more that brings us together as Democrats in terms of the values that we believe in than separates and divides us. And here in Michigan, because we spent so many years under the Republican-led legislature, there's so much work that we need to get done as Democrats to reflect our values and to reflect the needs of the state and the desires of the state. The Democrats are united in the desire to make life better for Michiganders, in the desire to run a legislature that is transparent and accountable and gets work done. And I think that it makes it much easier to work together. There will be places where there will be disagreements, absolutely, because we're still Democrats. But these things that we're working on right now are just the basic tenets of who we are as Democrats, and we're determined to get them done. Determined.
You know, and I see some of that. I mean, Illinois has not been a red state in a long time. It only flirted with it. It was purple for a long time. But even here, where we haven't gone through what you've gone through in Michigan, I've never seen Democrats as united, even in the vast differences between Chicago and the southern parts of this state, to pass legislation that is, they've never done before. I mean, really sort of remarkable things. And they've looked at, let's face it, a bit of corruption in the past, Democrats in Illinois, with like governors and mayors and aldermen all going to jail. And they've said, we can do better. And they're starting to do things even on ethics that are sort of surprising. I think, a happy time for the work that is being done.
It is a good time to be a Democrat, and I have to say, a lot of this, if you look on the other side at what's happening in the Republican Party, you see what happens when you let the divisions within your party take over. And I think Democrats are seeing that and recognizing that we have to be better, because we can't let our party become another version of that Republican Party right now. We have to do this in a way that protects ourselves, our state, our country, and our parties, frankly, because these parties are an important part of our democracy, and we can't let them crumble.
It's like you're reading my notes that I have in front of me, because we talked about sort of, values and approach to governing. And the next thing on my list is sort of like the role of politics and how differently the Democrats see it than the current Republican Party, which in your state particularly has collapsed into this pit of awfulness.
It's really hard to describe what's happening on the Republican side, but I do spend a lot of time reminding folks that just because the Republican Party itself has collapsed doesn't mean that Republicans won't still run, raise money, and try to win seats. So we can't stop the work we're doing because we think that the Republican Party has imploded. We still need to raise the money. We still need to knock the doors. We still need to have all the conversations with voters that we've been having since 2017, and that work will not stop. But yes, The Republicans here in Michigan have become a special kind of dysfunctional that I have never seen anywhere before in my life. And it shocks me. Almost every day there's something new and shocking that happens on the Republican side. But we try our best to remain focused on our desire to win more seats, to grow our majorities, to make it easier for us to move legislation in the legislature, and of course to win the seats like the big ones that we've got coming up in 2024.
Yep. Well, and I mean, the Republicans are not just dysfunctional, mean-spirited, mean, and where they want to take the country, and we see this where they have the power to do so, is so dangerous that the stakes are really high. I mean, another reason why you must continue to win is because the potential of damage if they get power is so great, and we see it in places like Iowa.
We do. And one of the things I worry most about is our voters, our electorate, throwing up their hands and believing that they don't have the power to protect their democracy and they don't have the power to affect change. Because they do. If they vote, they do. And we need to continue to be the voice of reason and the voice of understanding the importance of participating in the process, no matter how daunting, no matter how hard it feels and seems, wherever you are in the country. It is so important to continue to stand up and exercise your right to vote. You cannot concede your democracy to these people just because it feels hard. We have to keep doing it.
Yeah, and in the beginning, when I said how important this time is, in part I meant not for people in politics, but for Americans generally. The decisions they make are going to shape our future now in a way that the decisions they made in the 1990s might not have. We're just at a point where the individual decisions that people make to participate in our political life are so important right now in a way they haven't been, I think, maybe since the 1960s.
That's exactly right. And if you think about, the way we got to where we are here in Michigan is not just the work of this party, where I'd love to take all the credit, but because voters came out and voted for referenda that changed the way we vote here in Michigan, made it possible for no reason absentee voted, made it possible for same-day voter registration, made other ways to make it easier for people to access the ballot. When people stood up and said, no, you will not take away our right to abortion here in Michigan, those votes matter. That participation matters. Folks literally stood up as volunteers to get the signatures for those petitions. That's the kind of action that voters need to continue to take all over the country to affect change in their communities. You just gotta stand up and do it.
So, we've seen some victories in Wisconsin, though they are not yet out of their gerrymandered nightmare. We might see a victory for the first time in Ohio.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I was just saying that the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, hopefully they can get the gerrymandering taken care of, which will be a sea change for Wisconsin.
Sea change.
Wisconsin will start to look more like Michigan if we can get that done.
And their Supreme Court has the power to do that. Ohio's did not.
Does not. Right.
Yep. Really important for everyone listening to understand that 50 states are 50 different states with different rules. It's complicated, but you got to know them.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because Ben Wickler and I are often on panels together, and people will ask us questions, and we have to spend some time doing a little bit of civics lessons to explain what's different about Michigan and Wisconsin and why Wisconsin can't do all of the things that Michigan did because Wisconsin doesn't have the power of the citizen referendum that Michigan does. So it's just it's different. Yeah.
But Ohio had the power. They passed a referendum. Their Supreme Court backed them, and the legislature told them to go jump in Lake Erie. Right. So, I mean, crazy stuff. But the shock of Tennessee and Montana, where the GOP legislature just tossed legislatures out like they didn't matter and like their voters didn't matter. It may not make a difference in those states right away, but it sure is motivating people everywhere else.
It absolutely is. And, it will make incremental difference in those states that hopefully then we can help support state parties and others to build on from there. But to watch a legislature expel a member, like expulsion has been saved in most legislatures for the most egregious of malfeasance and even just illegality. And the idea that they've chosen to go the expulsion route because they disagree with someone, or even because they're uncomfortable with a trans woman in their midst, which is what I think is happening, is just shocking to me, and a shocking misuse of democracy and of the power of the legislature and of the power of their majorities in those legislatures. And the people have not been silent and will not be silent. And while, like you said, the consequences will not be immediate and swift, I believe there will be consequences.
Yeah, I think Americans are stunned at the abuse of power they're seeing at the hands of Republicans, whether it's these legislatures that they've never thought of until last week, or the Supreme Court, just massive abuse of power that's sort of stunning Americans, or Kevin McCarthy threatening to take the whole country down because, he wants to change laws he doesn't have the votes to pass. I think people are motivated to get past this. Even people who hate politics, they just want to get on with their lives, but they see this as being in the way.
Yes, and I think ever since the 2017-2018, we have been worried about losing the momentum that we built up when Trump won, right? Folks got outraged at the Trump victory, and we've been worried about losing the momentum. But what continues to happen is Republicans continue to find new ways to shock and dismay us, which continue to allow us to remind people of the importance of their action and their motivation and their desire to participate in the process. It just keeps coming. And what happened in Tennessee and Montana will help North Carolina, will help Arizona, will help, right? Because we can have conversations with our voters. Let's not let that happen to us. And that will help us move folks to participate.
I have two thoughts about that. And one of them is you could not be more right. The Republicans just don't learn from their losses. They double down and they'll lose more. And then I'm grateful for that. But on the other hand, I feel like, focusing on the miserable things they do one at a time is, like trying to put Band-Aids on them. We can't catch all of the miserable things they do. And if we catch 90%, then 10% still are making the world worse. So I want to do what you're doing in Michigan around the country, which is just win. Let's put an end to it. It's like, win, cure the disease.
Exactly. And part of winning is spending some time letting folks know about the bad things that Republicans can, will, and have done, but also about telling the story of what happens when you put Democrats in charge. And what I would love to see is let folks around the country point to Michigan. This is what happens when you put Democrats in charge. Let's look at the Biden record and talk about the work that the Biden administration has done that has changed the lives. It's brought jobs here to Michigan and all over the country. We have to tell the story of what happens when Democrats are in charge at the same time, and maybe even a little bit louder than we're telling the story of what the Republicans have done.
Yeah, and the vision thing is so starkly different. I mean, I listened to the National Security Advisor give a talk on foreign policy where he talked about actually changing the world's, the financial system that was built after World War II and then doubled down on in the 90s to create what was the global financial system, and acknowledging that wasn't really so. We didn't get it all right, but in fact, we hurt workers. We put critical businesses in jeopardy. We put parts of the free world at risk to supply chain problems that were being manipulated, and we needed to make changes at that vast scale. And they demonstrate in this administration they are up to that task. That is one of the hardest, most complicated global things to achieve, and they're spending the time and effort all over the world working to make a financial structure where workers don't just pay the price for other people getting rich. And that is so big, and Democrats are doing it. And Donald Trump couldn't build a wall. We're doing these big things. Right? Besides that, he's a crook, and he couldn't do anything.
Yes, and but one of the things that is fascinating to me to watch as both I get to watch the Whitmer administration here in Michigan while watching the Biden administration in D.C. and the global work is that unafraid of hard work. Because, it's nice to just scratch off the easy things, but the big hard work, the long-term work, the work that doesn't happen overnight and really causes people on Twitter to say, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? When you finally get it done, they'll go, oh, that's what you were working on. But you have to be able to stay focused and ready to take a little bit of that hit for not looking like you're doing something while you're working hard on something that not everyone can see. And we have to be patient, recognizing that big change does not come overnight, but big change is coming because the right people are in charge and the right people are willing to do the hard work to make big change happen.
I'm stunned into silence by how right you are, and I'm in awe of the people who do it. Right? Because this work is not just hard work. It takes, to go back to a point you made earlier in a slightly different frame, it takes courage to see the world differently. It takes courage to say, I'm going to get up and move all of those parts.
And it takes courage to be the anti of a former president. It's not just me. It's not just Gretchen Whitmer, it's not just Joe Biden, it's the people around them, the systems they build, the government they build, the legislature they work with, and none of them are taking sole credit for any of it and don't need the credit. They just want to get the work done.
Well, and in fairness, the only way to get the work done is to share the credit.
That's exactly right.
Right? It takes so many people to do this. You really, and I don't mean share it like gratuitously. I mean, everybody has to do their work.
Yes. You have to surround yourself with people who will do the work, and then, let them do their jobs. I think this is the sign of a good leader. This is what Governor Whitmer does, is that she surrounds herself with folks who are going to be terrific at their jobs, and then she lets them do the job.
In a very different setting in my life, in a business setting, I've heard people say A's hire A's, B's hire C's.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People who are great hire people who are great. Or, you see in like Donald Trump's government, you see just people who don't understand the job, or may not be interested in doing it, would rather build a fancy new bathroom like in their office than actually do the work. Mm-hmm. It's just mind-numbing. Mind-numbing because, it's supposed to be public service, right? That's why you do it, because you're doing it for the public good. And it is thrilling to me when someone like the governor or the president is able to bring someone into public service who is brilliant and who is willing to take their brilliance and apply it to a public service sector. Yep. And so many people in that former administration were A, not brilliant, and B, did not give a hoot about public service. But were, excited about building bathrooms and having fancy titles and taking trips. Yeah, crazy. So you and I share a vision for America that is not shared by the Republican Party. We think that if we do the work and we do it well, we will be humanity's first truly multiracial, multi-faith democracy where power is actually shared by all of us and where making government decisions lifts everyone up. That's our thing. That's not their thing. But I think we're making progress.
Not their thing. We are definitely making progress, and it feels good. And when you look at how Michigan is governing, you see it taking shape in just the way we envisioned it for some people as long as 40 years ago, because that's how long it's been since we've had the Senate here in Michigan, 40 long years. And to be able to watch it happen in this moment here is such a privilege for me. And as we watch the the multi-gendered, multiracial, LGBTQ, straight, everyone coming together in this legislature. This is the most diverse legislature I've ever seen. And I don't know the numbers nationally, but I feel like we must have one of the most diverse legislatures in the country. And it's just a joy to watch. And it proves what I've always believed was possible is possible. And if we can do it here in Michigan, it can happen anywhere. But you just have to start building it and believing in it and reminding the people that it's possible.
Yeah, it is a beautiful thing what you're doing there. And there are other states that are, trying, but you guys have had such a big shift. It's just so beautiful to see. Let's talk about 2024 just for a minute. Joe Biden has done a great job as president. And I know people are concerned about his age, but I think Democrats are going to rally around him. I don't think there's going to be any question about that. Do you?
No, I don't think there's going to be any question about that at all. I think, we are so proud of the work that Biden and Harris have done as president and vice president. I love how he is lifting up Vice President Harris now. We're remembering that they are indeed a team. They are a team that we support and believe in. I believe Democrats will absolutely rally behind him and be excited once again to reelect him in 2024.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we take back the House. The Senate is tougher this time. We have so many races. You have a race in your state. I'm sort of more comfortable about what you'll do, but you have one in Wisconsin that's going to be tough. One in Ohio is going to be very tough. The Senate is going to be tough, and we've got big shoes to fill here. Senator Stabenow is a force, and she's going to be missed both in the U.S. Senate, but by us here in Michigan. But we will. She has pledged to help us with everything she's got, and we will replace the great senator with another Democrat. But it is never a given, so it's hard work for us. And then, of course, there are seats in other states that are going to be really tough for us. So I think you're right to say that the Senate is tough, not impossible, but tough. Yeah, I mean, as you said earlier, though, while we're doing things that people are sort of noticing because it's making a difference in their lives, the other guys are just like hammering people on the head. And at some point, that may become an issue, even in places like Ohio. Yeah,
it will be. And I think, we're going to continue to be talking about abortion as an issue as we go into 2024, I think, as the Republicans continue to try to find different ways to take away women's rights. I think that there are going to be issues on the table that folks are going to see a stark contrast still and again between the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's going to help us in races all over the country. I think there's a lot of potential for us to tell the story of Democrats all over the country and win some seats that might surprise folks.
All right, we ran out of time. Did I say at the beginning when I was introducing you that you are the best? It is, and I want everybody to understand that the work that Lavora Barnes does in Michigan is as hard as anything you can imagine, right? And I mean, it's not like you're going door to door in a big city. It's a very big state. A whole lot of it's rural. She's got to get people to show up and join the fight. In how many counties are in your state?
83 counties.
In 83 counties, and I think there's some tribal areas too.
There are.
So,
yes.
That's a ton of work, and you've done it brilliantly. And I hope that you and Ben, if you're doing this together, can export this to the states that are hungry for it.
We're going to do our best because we think we've started to build out a formula here that we can share with others.
Yep. All right. Well, congratulations. I love talking to you. Thank you for giving me the time today.
It is always my pleasure. It's good to talk to you.
Bye. All right, everybody. That was the fabulous Lavora Barnes. We're going to take a break for the news. And when we come back, journalist Jill Lawrence is joining me. Stay tuned.